Hey guys, Windsor here, and welcome to the Groove Guru podcast. I was recently reflecting on something that, when I heard it, resonated with me as one of the best lessons I've ever learned as a musician. And I feel inspired to explore and reflect on that some more in today's episode. So, let's go. As some context, it was when I was drumming with the classic rock band Wishbone Ash, and around the time of the first show I did with the band, which was their first show after lockdown, and it was at the Sala BBK Music Legends Festival in Bilbao, Spain. A few weeks earlier, after being asked to come on board and play the show, I got to work on learning the material. And if you're interested in how I approached learning the repertoire for that and some approaches I find work really well for preparing for tours I do as a professional musician, I spoke about that in a previous Groove Guru podcast episode, funnily enough called How I Prepare for Tours as a Professional Musician. And in this episode, I want to share and reflect on that lesson I learned in the process of those Wishbone Ash shows that I was never taught in my formal education as a musician, and is something that continues to rock my world in really cool and pretty profound ways, musically and beyond. After rehearsing with Wishbone Ash for the Bilbao show for a few days, a very infrequent occurrence for the band. I remember when we rehearsed in London, the guitar player Mark says, "Oh wow, a rehearsal, a luxury. We don't rehearse." The last time I rehearsed with the band, and the only time I rehearsed with the band, was like 5 years ago when I first joined them. And funnily enough, it was in this very room. So after that luxury of a rehearsal, we sat down the night before flying to Bilbao. We were in London and we were having some dinner and we hung out. And during that meal, Wishbone Ash bass player, Maestro Bob Skeet, said something to me that really resonated, and what I heard really landed and got me reflecting. He said, "Windsor, there are no egos in this band. We all know we can play, so let's just do what's right for the music." Now, on the surface of that, which can sound like a great ideas from a seasoned music professional, and it's pretty cool. Underneath it is something I hear as much deeper and inherently loving, that continues to be a great and very practical insight. So let's explore that more and how it can play out in music and life. The first part of Bob's pointer: there are no egos in this band. Now, everyone has their imaginary egos, but what I heard after those words that Bob said was that it's when we see beyond the ego that we open up to living in a more harmonious way with more wisdom. Now, again, we all have an ego, which is our self concept, our imagined, made up self image, our personal view of ourself in a body, and our outlook on life, and it has its uses. Yet I've come to see that any problems that people have in any area of their life essentially appear in the form of ego. And when we break it down, we can see that the ego is essentially all of the thinking that we do, the content of what we think. And again, thinking has its uses. From when we're born and as we grow and learn, our mind gets programmed with information and thinking, and we can apply that and grow our thought data bank and our skills and hone our craft, whatever we're doing, and build up our reasonable confidence based on our previous performances. And We all have our personalities that we express, which are drawn from our memories. Yet, fundamentally, any problem we ever have in life only exists in ego, in personal thinking. Now, the ego, it likes to play a lot of games. And one of the ones it particularly loves is getting into proving ourselves as being good enough to win others' approval, to move on in the game of life, to accomplish what we want to accomplish, whatever game it is that we're playing. And one of the problems with proving is that there can be no end to the extent that we can do that. And when Bob said, we all know we can play, a tremendous weight lifted off my shoulders. What I realised is that I'd been doing a tremendous amount of proving and applied thought work preparing for the show. And I realised that I was more than on it for the show. I got this. And from that point, I relaxed within myself much more. And the more I did that, the more I really enjoyed the whole process so much more deeply from that point on. Something I've seen quite a lot is that what so many people do, and we're all included in this to an extent, is we try to prove ourselves so much that it's easy to get extensively caught up in all of the noise in our heads. And so a lot of people, they live there. It's like they make a nest out of that. And you can see it if you look. It's so common for people to be really preoccupied with what's going on in their head. You know, they're looking down at the ground as they're walking, they're being on their phones, they're not being present with what's actually happening. And we can all do that to an extent, me too. And when it comes to being a musician or in whatever profession we're in, whilst those details of thought that we have can undeniably be useful, if we're just focusing on the ego alone, it can really get in the way of deeply being in the experience of whatever we're doing. And musically, that often leads to overplaying, misunderstanding what other people are saying, not really listening, and more. Now, when Bob said what he said, that we all know we can play, just before that, I was basically a little caught up in my thoughts, wanting to do my best and impress and trying. And when I saw that, I realised that my thinking was basically a bit unclear. So I let go of it. And when I did that, I felt so much relief and the stillness that naturally comes as a result of doing that. And the third part of what Bob said was that let's just do what's right for the music. It led me even deeper and I reflected more. Whilst to some extent, we will always play the proving game, whatever we're doing, with the best of intentions to do what we see as right for the music. It's not the way to really doing what's right for the music of whatever we're doing at a much deeper level, where our mind is clearest, freest, and most creative, reflective, and in a deeper space where the whole process is much more enjoyable, relaxed, and actually pretty magical. During one of his talks, the Scottish mystic Sidney Banks referred to that deeper space we can show up from as righteousness, or the right useness of the mind. And as I see it, it's something that transcends right or wrong and ideas, and it can't be understood intellectually. And it's not about the words that we have for it as much as the feeling that is created when we find what we're truly looking for. And to find that feeling, which athletes and musicians, artists, and others refer to as the zone, we have to go beyond all our ideas about what that is and go beyond all of our ideas, period. and move from our thinking to a deeper level of thought where we're not analyzing and processing and trying, but allowing the flow of what naturally wants to come through. And indeed, we obviously do our homework. We need to do our homework and prepare for whatever performance we get to do as that applies. Yet, to drop into that deeper space of resourcefulness, we must let go temporarily of all of the previous thinking we've done, the known, the ego, to merge with that zone of the unknown. And in my experience, that's the space in which the magic of life really happens. It's the space of intuition, insight, deeper listening, and connection with all that we really are. It's where we stand as one, to reference one of the Wishbone Ash songs in the repertoire. And another one of Sid Banks' quotes that I love from one of his earlier talks was that if you drop your ego, your image of self-importance, and simply be you, just you, whoever you are, you'll find the secret to heaven on earth. Now, mentioning the word heaven, I'm not talking being religious here as we think about it. It's just a word that points to a space inside of us that Sid also described as when the mind is free of the contamination of personal thought. And as we show up from that experience beyond concepts, even though there's noise on the stage as you co-create as a musician or whatever it is that you're doing in life, it's when there's no noise in your head. And that's when you really fall in love with whatever you're doing. Again, it's the space in which the magic of life truly happens and unfolds. The feeling of living from that space, and it's a feeling you can actually live your life in, remains truly one of the best and most useful lessons I ever learned as a musician and beyond that. And the moment we let go of our egotistical notions of being as great and as special as we might think we are, or vice versa, and trying to prove ourselves, letting go of that is the key to unlocking the door to that space inside us. And no matter what our position is in this apparent game of life we're playing, we're all doing the best we can see to in the moment, given our current state of mind and how clear that is. And underneath all of our thoughts about that, we always open up to that feeling inside us where we're free to show up at our best and do what's right and wisest and most insightful, whatever the context we're engaged in. Now, sure, me too. We all have to do our homework as it applies before doing what we get to do, to the extent that we do that. Yet, when we then show up from the experience beyond concepts, another word for that being love, which is that pure feeling, we're guided by a wisdom greater than what the ego and our personal thought system alone can ever provide. It's a wisdom behind and before all things that knows how to bring forth the ideas we most need and helps us discern the actions we most need to implement in this moment. So, as an invitation, the next time that you're engaged in a performance, as an experiment, and something I learned from the great coach, Steve Chandler, is that experiments never fail. The next time you're engaged in a performance, whatever that is for you, I invite you to see what happens when you let go of your preconceived ideas and drop into that space of pure feeling. Now, again, I'm not suggesting not preparing and practicing as thoroughly as you need to help you ace your performances in whatever realm you're involved in, but during those experiences, to know that you've practiced as well as and as best as you did beforehand, and that you can responsibly drop into more presence where you respond with wisdom to all that's going on. And if you're anything like me, when you do, you'll find yourself enjoying and loving every note you're playing like never before, and doing what's right for the music you're playing, whatever that is, beyond what you believe is possible. So, have fun. Feel free to check out some videos from some of the Wishbone Ash shows I did, which you can see on the front page of my YouTube channel, which you can access via my site windsordrums.com. Check out other episodes of the Groove Guru podcast on Apple and Spotify, and I'll talk with you soon.